Hey, in my 40 years in the car business, I've worked with some managers who could literally, I'm talking literally, double the volume of a dealership. Now, I've also worked with managers, and this is probably more the rule, I think the other ones are more the exception, but I've also worked with a lot of managers that they could come into a store that's selling, maybe 125, 150 cars a month, and guess what? 6 months later, they're still selling 125 or 150 a month. So what's the difference? Well, in today's video, I am kicking off a 10-part series on the biggest mistakes that I've seen over the 4 decades that I've been in the car business. And the first one is, and I didn't really put these in order. I'm not saying that this carries the most weight, but I'm just the one I'm going to talk about first. But the first one I'm going to talk about today is they stop learning. I mean, let's face it. Good management, easy for me to say, good management can make or break a dealership. And every dealer principal, they dream of finding that rock star manager, right? When they've got a store that maybe is underperforming or maybe just doing average numbers, they want the guy that can come in there and turn it around. The one that walks into a store that's doing 150 units or maybe 125 that can build the right culture, right? Which is probably one of the biggest things that they need to do. But also being able to develop people, which is also another big thing, right? But they can create accountability, and before long, guess what? That store is pushing 250 or maybe even 300 units a month. Hey, those managers, they exist. I mean, I've worked with them. But they're rare. They're like, in my opinion, they're really the unicorns of management. Most managers, I hate to say this, but you're probably not going to be the first time you've heard it, but most managers, most salespeople are average. And average producers, guess what? They produce average results. So what's the difference? Well, after all these years, I've noticed one big common denominator. There's probably a few of them, but this one is one I want to address today, which is the average managers. They believe that getting promoted, it means to them like, well, I've arrived. I've made it. I'm a manager now, right? I know what I'm doing is what they think. I don't need any more training. In fact, hell, a lot of them never really trained in the first place. And, that's the attitude which, in my opinion, is the kiss of death. It really is. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure you've heard this before, I think Zig Ziglar's the one that said it, but he said, if you don't take a shower every day, you'll stink. And if you don't train every day, guess what? You will also stink. I love that quote because really it's true. Training isn't something you do, to get promoted. Training is what keeps you improving after you've been promoted, because let's face it, you don't want to come in and stay the same. You want to be raising the bar. You want to be raising your own personal bar. At the end of the day, what got you into management won't necessarily keep you as a manager. I learned that one myself. And let's face it, I've made these mistakes myself, along with seeing others. But the skills that made you a great salesperson aren't the same skills that's going to make you a great leader, which is really, at the end of the day, is really what management is about. It's about leading. It's about growing. Leadership has to be learned. Coaching has to be learned as well. Some people are more natural at it than others, but it's also a trait that can be learned. Holding people accountable, running productive sales meetings. Let's face it, sales meetings are very important, but they're not important if they're not run right. And probably one of the bigger things is creating the right culture, developing future managers. A lot of managers are afraid to grow their salespeople. But at the end of the day, you want to grow your salespeople. You want to replace yourself. And here's another quote that I've always believed. The speed of the boss, and you've heard this one before too, the speed of the boss is the speed of the team. Think about that. If a manager is reading books, if a manager is actually doing things to make himself better, listening to podcasts, maybe role-playing with other managers, watching training videos, maybe making training videos, taking notes. You ever see that manager in the meeting that's up there taking notes and all the salespeople are just kind of like, looking what's going on? They're working on bettering their craft. They're working on being better at what they do. And guess what? In a lot of cases, the salespeople will take notice. It might take some time before they do, but they will take notice. And whether they admit it or not, managers walk around acting like, hey, they've got it figured out. Guess what happens? The salespeople, they quit growing too. When the managers quits, guess what? Salespeople follow. The speed of the managers, the speed of the team. Leadership, it trickles downhill. You've heard this before. And so does complacency. That also rolls downhill. So one thing that always amazes me that I've seen over the years is the very best managers that I've ever worked with, they're really the biggest students. Some have been in the business, 20 or 30 years. But guess what? They still carry around notebooks. They're still trying to get better. They're still role playing. They're still doing the things that they think that will make them better. And guess what? They do get better. They still ask questions. They still go to trainings. They're the ones that are checked in. They're not the ones that check out when you start talking about training. They still want to be coached because, hey, they know that there's still things to learn. They don't know it all. And they want to learn more every single day because they understand something that the average managers don't, which is the moment you think you know it all, guess what? Your growth stops. It dies. It's over. So here's my challenge to every manager watching this. Ask yourself this one simple question. What have I learned in the last 30 days that has made me or will make me a better leader? What have you done? What have you read? What have you listened to? If you can't answer that question today, when are you going to start? When are you going to start learning again? Because your team will rarely outgrow you. If you grow, they'll grow. If you stop, guess what? Usually they stop. Maybe you got a unicorn salesperson that doesn't, and that's the one that gets it. That's the one that'll be promoted as well. Next week, I'm going to talk about what I think is one of the biggest reasons dealerships become dysfunctional. And I know you've heard this term before. It probably was made in the car business. I don't know, but I remember the first time I heard it, I thought it was kind of funny, but you've heard the term, the tail wags the dog. The tail wags the dog. And if you've been in this business for any length of time, you've heard that saying. I don't know who originated it, but it's a great saying. I'm going to talk about it next week, because it's a big reason why a lot of dealerships are still average. I'm Scott Klein, Dealer Profit Academy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.